All right, we're going. Hey, Tyler Ratliff, how are you? See you in the chat there. Just a reminder, everybody, if you don't care, mute yourself. And if you want to leave your video on, that's fine. If you want to turn your video off, that's fine too. Tonight, we are discussing the intro to hunting. And when I say we, definitely we, Davey Black, I think you've been to all the webinars, haven't you, Davey? You've been to all of them? Maybe.
Not the first one.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
make the first one, but since then,
Uh, Davey Black's going to be speaking as much or more than I am, as well as James Nayhouse. So I put all the information about those two guys in their official stuff. It's very lengthy, so I didn't put all of it in there about these two guys. So glad they're here and glad you're here. So look forward to it. Eric Comley, who's down there below, he is going to be assisting next time when we lead the next one, which is a month away on plants. So be looking for him coming in about a month. So good to have you all here. Dave Robinson's in here somewhere too, another NRS instructor. So glad you guys are here. All right, I've got a quote to start us off since we're on this topic of hunting. This is from The Hunter's Paradox, written by Hank Shaw. I feel a deep kinship with the animals I hunt. Most hunters do. We get to know them in a far deeper way than all but a few other sorts of human. We know their personalities, their foibles, their habits, where they like to live, what they like to eat, and what they might do in any given situation. Yet most of us take delight in being fooled when a deer or rabbit shows us some new quick or quirk of their behavior. Hunt any animal long enough, and it ceases to be the Disney-fed caricature of itself most people know and blossoms into a clever, free-thinking entity, an entity not so different from us. That's kind of where I'd like to start things as we get started on the intro to hunting. So, what we thought we'd get started with, we got an hour, and me and Davey and Nayhouse have talked about this so many times that it will be an absolute miracle if we get this in an hour. So, bear with us. We're going to do everything we can to be uh, educational, but also covering a lot of subjects tonight in this hour. I'm sure we're going to go over some. So, be with us and be ready for that. The first topic of discussion is on hunting ethics, the sustainability of these animals, and legal. So, one of the big things that comes about from my perspective when we're hunting is this idea of it not just being, hey, we're going to kill a bunch of things. We're also, sorry, I'm letting people in as I'm talking to. We're not going to be just killing things. We're also going to be responsible for stewardship, conservation, and the like as we move forward in doing all these things that we do that we call hunting. I think that's as big a part of it as going out and harvesting something, getting something, killing something, and bringing it home and eating it. So I think that's just as important. If we're not taking care of the woods are not going to take care of us. That's what I like to say all the time. So I think that is a huge lessons that I've learned. I've tried to, in the past month, send you an email each week about some of the topics that we'll be discussing. I sent one lengthy email about this change of heart that I had after killing a bunch of critters one year in particular. And I hope that illustrated the point of, maybe how we should go about looking at these things. Another big part of ethics and sustainability are the legal considerations. So understanding the regs and ethical considerations come together. That's one of many reasons Nayhouse is here. If you don't know Nayhouse, James Nayhouse is a fish and game officer here in the state of Kentucky. He's also part of the NRS cadre. And you want to give us that 3,000-foot view, Nayhouse, on some of the regs and stuff of that nature as it relates to hunting?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's a lot here. We're going to try and keep it concise, but what I would say in this is when it comes to hunting within whatever state. I don't know if everybody's from Kentucky that's in this group or not, but every state's going to have regulations on hunting. Every state's going to have their own set of laws that you got to abide by, and knowing those laws, of course, are your purview as the hunter, and understanding the nuances within each species you're hunting, where you are, those kinds of things. So there's the wider view on this, kind of tying it into ethics, is, and I'm going to try, and if I can, I'm not didn't become a game warden because I understand computers super well. I'm going to try and share this screen here, because it's where I wanted to kind of start tying it in with ethics. All right. So are you guys, let's see. There we go. What do you guys, are you guys seeing this?
Not yet.
Okay.
There it is. It just popped up.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So there's a lot to this slide. It talks a lot about basically the sustainability and that goes in with regulated hunting, and how it all ties together. I highlighted a few points in there, that that are important. But regulated hunting, on that 3,000 kind of mile view of it, without regulated hunting, we'll have overpopulations. All right, and that's what we discovered. So we went from unregulated hunting, where we lost populations and we basically decimated everything, to then regulating it, and we actually tried to control it too much, and we had an overpopulation. And we've discovered that hunting helps to maintain that balance in there. But ethical hunting and legal hunting are the key phrases there. 0%, I think, is this one phrase over here. 0% of any wildlife in North America has ever gone extinct due to legal hunting. Of course, legals being the key phrase there. So if we regulate hunting and we keep it legal, and we take care of that, then we actually are helping the ecosystem, and we are keeping it in balance. Anything else, Davey or Craig, you want to add to that? I'm not, if there's more a different.
I was just going to add in like the kind of the biologist perspective of that. Like there are folks in the science side of things on the background, and they put a lot of time and effort into researching what is going to be best for keeping those populations under control, but also sustainable for future hunting and whatnot. And they inform a lot of the regulations kind of on the back end. So it's not, the rules aren't there just to be rules. They're there for a reason and grounded in scientific research.
And that last part of that slide, I think, talks about that. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but you're exactly right.
Will
Wildlife
it go full
management.
size?
I don't know. Is it small for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like in the fold. We're just seeing it in the folder.
Oh, okay. Let me try. Okay.
While you're doing that, Nahas, I'll add this. Well, I'm pretty fond of saying this. There's a lot of folks in the self-reliance prepper, in particular survival communities, that have a problem with government intervention. I am one of those too. I'm not a big fan of government intervention in my life, unless we the people demonstrate that we cannot take care of ourselves or do what we're supposed to. And then in this particular case, when we were left unregulated and biologists were not helping us, we killed and almost made so many things extinct. There's several species that have left, particularly here in the state of Kentucky, due to unregulated market hunting. And so I'm a big fan of what Davey was saying as far as the biologists doing their thing, and then Nahas doing his thing to make sure people are not killing too many critters they don't need to be killing or catching too many fish. That's my perspective. Go ahead, Dave.
100%.
Go ahead.
Are you guys seeing the big version now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was just going to point out is exactly what Dave was talking about. This is, the model for wildlife conservation, and that second to last bullet point: wildlife management, use, and conservation shall be based on sound scientific knowledge and principles. So just like Dave was saying, they don't just pick these things willy nilly. They're going to use science. They're going to make sure that they're using research to make all these decisions on bag limits and season dates and et cetera. So I'm with Craig 100% that, if we prove we can't regulate ourselves, then we're going to have to do something about it. You're muted, Craig.
Okay, guys, we ready to move on to the next line? Davey and Nahas. Okay, cool. So the next one, we wanted to go on a gear overview. And I'm probably one of the reasons I like our group, our cadre group, is we've got quite a range of ages and experiences. For example, I've been hunting my whole life, but I'm kind of setting my ways in some old school stuff. Davey's a lot younger. He's got a couple degrees in wildlife stuff. So, I mean, I lean on Davey a lot, and Nahas is in it day to day. So, this gear overview, I think, is pretty important in that as far as hunting goes, you basically can use bows and you can use firearms, but there's a lot of other gear that's the tertiary gear that goes with it. So, meaning there's stuff like calls, there is the clothes. I'm sure these guys are going to talk about that stuff too, but it's one of those things that for like turkey hunting, people really like to nerd out on all of the different calls that are out there, for example. So you can use slate calls, you can use box calls, you can use mouth calls, and all the things that go along with it. And it's one of those things, and I wanted to mention this, we'll probably discuss it in detail. In the fall, we're going to actually have an in person class where we do an introduction to hunting for a whole weekend. And we're going to set up tree stands. We're going to use calls. We're going to shoot guns and bows and all that kind of stuff. And you'll leave the class a certified safe hunter, thanks to Nahas. He's been working with the state to make sure that we can get this class covered, and the state will recognize us so that you can get your what's called your orange card here in Kentucky if you attend with us. So particularly on bows, Davey, I am so out of the loop on bows and stuff. Would you care to talk about that?
I I don't do much in the way of compound bow or anything like that myself. I got out of that game as soon as I got tall and couldn't afford bows with a long enough draw length anymore.
Right.
They get expensive really fast on the big end. But here in Kentucky, we do have a fairly generous crossbow season. Growing up, that wasn't an option. I grew up in Virginia, and I think even Kentucky was for quite some time. Crossbows were only for folks with some sort of physical limitations. Um, and so I never grew up using any sort of archery tackle really, but here in Kentucky now we do have anybody can use crossbows, and so I've started participating in that
Hey, Dave,
quite a
if you don't
bit.
care, we probably got some people that don't even know what a crossbow is. If you want to explain it to them.
Okay, so it's sort of like a cross between a bow and a rifle. You would shoulder it like a firearm, but it has a set of bow limbs and cables and string and everything flat on the top, and it cocks towards the back and releases the arrow straight out of the center of it versus like a bow like you would see in a movie or something where it's drawn back and released. Um, it's a lot of people claim that the crossbows are cheating and they're too effective and this, that, and the other. And I've personally not found that to be the case, but you know, yeah, I think there's a world of opinions on all the different tackle and things like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's using what you feel like gives you the best opportunities to get in the woods and spend more time. That's, why I chose to go down the crossbow route was I could afford it and it gave me more opportunities to get in the woods over top of just your typical firearms season and whatnot. Because due to the reduced effectiveness of them comparatively to a firearm, generally your archery seasons are longer. You get more allotted time in the woods. So that's why I've gone that route. But as soon as gun season rolls around, I'm grabbing a firearm. I'm not married to that crossbow by any means.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing that everybody needs to understand is that these uh Nahas mentioned it, but there's seasons, what are called seasons. And so there's particular times a year where different animals are in season and you cannot hunt them outside of that season. The cool thing about it is most of these seasons are set up to optimize the health of the herd from a biologist perspective. And so those things are done not willy nilly by chance. Hey, let's just say this month is when we're going to hunt deer. They're doing it so that you as a hunter has the most opportunities for success. Case in point, rifle season for deer is right during the major rut of deer population, which means the rut is where bucks are kind of in the mood to breed and they don't think as clearly. So it makes it a little bit easier to hunt them. And so that is when we have our hunting season in Kentucky, set by a biologist, and it's been like that forever, and which makes it good. So the bigger success rate. They want us to get these animals, as one of these guys mentioned earlier. If we're not getting some of these animals out, they're going to overpopulate. So we've got to make that happen. As far as other gear pieces, some of the things that are not, hey, these are hunting gear, but they're just as important, is things like a first aid kit. Anytime I'm around a firearm, anytime I'm around a bow or a knife or anything, I've got anytime I go out of the house, I've got a first aid kit with me. But if I'm going to the field, particularly by myself, back in the woods, squirrel hunting, deer hunting, rabbit hunting, I'm going to have a first aid kit on me that includes a tourniquet. So we've said it a million times. If you were here the last time we went over a first aid kit, there's a blog on our website that has that listing of stuff in it. There is also a webinar that we did the last month with Clark Pelfrey. If you weren't there, that is in your membership. So go to the interviews and webinars and you can watch that interview with Clark. So that's important. You can also take radios anymore. Most modern hunters have a text group for all the guys that are on their land and in the deer stands. And hey, I got a big one over here. I saw this, I got that sort of stuff, and talking smack against each other too, which is fun. And then another big one that I think we need to be aware of is some seasons you have to wear hunter orange, which is critical to being able to be seen during different seasons. For example, during deer season, you got to have something that covers your chest, your back, and your head. Is that right, Nahas?
Correct.
Here in Kentucky.
360.
For those of you in different states, you need to check your regs because that might not be the regs in your state wherever you're located, but that's pretty across the board. It's pretty similar to that. And that orange cannot be a broken pattern. It has to be a solid orange. It can't be camouflage orange, for example.
You want a cool little factoid there?
Yeah, lay it on me.
So when they did the initial like hunter orange studies, hot pink stands out better in the woods than blaze orange, but they decided, probably correctly, that they were not going to get the hunting component of the United States to start wearing hot pink, so they went with second choice of orange instead.
I can verify that fact. That is verifiable.
I know that a lot of the military folks that I train, they have hot pink signal panels for tanks and Bradleys and stuff like that. I didn't know that they had done that study for hunters, though. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. All right, cool. Anything, and again, this is a big view. Any questions in particular about gear from any of you all? If you've got questions, throw them in the chat. Did somebody have something to add?
I was going to say, I'll throw in a couple quick things.
Please.
To add in. The main point that I think Dave and Craig have both made, of course, finding that works for you is probably the most important thing. I mean, whether it's you're comfortable with a firearm, whether it ends up being comfortable with archery or crossbow, finding what works for you. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment, any hobby, whether you're into model airplanes, whatever. You can spend lots of money, you can spend little money. Finding that balance is what's important for you and what you want to do. As the law enforcement guy, I've got to say that probably the most important is this.
Right. There you go. Sorry, Nate. I didn't bring that up. You better have that before Mr. Green Jeans gets a hold of you.
Before I show up, you're going to need this. But, slightly jesting, but it is a piece of equipment you got to have. You need to have your hunting license, and you got to know what's going on in your state as far as, what permits you need and all of those kinds of things. And at the end, if there's questions about this, I'm absolutely happy to answer any questions on regulations that people have. But There's a lot of important equipment out there, but having your hunt license is definitely one of them.
Hey, and again, I make no apologies for encouraging people to get their hunting license. I know too many people that never hunt, have never hunted, that buy their hunting license every year because they know, if you don't know this, 100% of the proceeds from hunting licenses goes to the Department of Fish and Wildlife here in Kentucky, and it's like that in nearly every state. There's some other things I wanted to talk about this, but there's some other ways that they get funding outside of that, and that's really important to understand, but it's not important for a 1 hour seminar. I would love to talk about how that happens, because we basically taxed ourselves. Hunters basically said, tax us, put a tax on stuff so that we can push more money to wildlife, which is really important. All right,
Come to
let's
the
move on.
class in September or whenever it is, and
We'll talk about it. Please do come to the in-person class if you can make it, you all. So we're going to put all this together in person. Couple of questions that popped up that will go to this next one. How do you know where to put a tree stand up? I think this is where reading and interpreting sign starts to come into play. That's where, I think that's one of the things that NRS excels at, is nearly every instructor we've got is a tracker in some way, shape, or form. We all do something with animal tracking. The more you go out and track, the better you're going to be. So that's going to be pretty critical to getting out and tracking, and getting out with some mentor wherever you live. For those of you who are members here, you have a course in your membership on animal tracking that goes along with my book on tracking, my little field guide. So that is a fantastic way to start if you've never done any tracking, because you can sit and do that at your house, and you get a good start to tracking. But yeah, I think that's it. You've got to be able to read the signs, and the signs include disturbance on the ground, the tracks themselves, what kind of sign, what kind of bite marks are left on plants and woody stemmed plants to indicate that an animal has been through there. These are the kind of things that you're going to be looking for when you're trying to find where animals are located. But always keep this in mind as a tracker. The critters out there need the same things you do. They need safety and security, shelter. Number one, they need water, and they need food. And so they're going to know where their safety is, which is what me and you would call safe, our houses, shelter. They're going to have safe areas that they like to lounge around in. They're also going to have areas where they travel corridors where they go to water, and travel corridors where they go to food. If you can establish where those lines and those corridors are, those are great places to hunt, whether it's squirrel hunting, deer hunting, whatever it is. So this past weekend, Clayton Worrell and I, another instructor with Nature Reliance School, we set up a course for land navigation down at Camp Hero, and we jumped 2 woodcocks. And the whole time I'm walking through there, I told Clayton, I said, this is the grousiest woodcock lookingest place I've been in a long time. We better jump one while we're in here. And we jumped 2. Now, how did I know that? How did I know I was getting ready to jump a woodcock? Well, it looks like the kind of area that a woodcock like to hang out in. A lot of low shrubbery, real close woody stem plants, forest that had been basically clear cut, and there's a bunch of little stuff. And so it was perfect habitat. So understand that's important. Beyond tracking, understanding mammal behavior is another piece of this puzzle. So, for example, that's what I was just describing. Understanding where woodcocks like to stay for safety and security will put you in the right spot to hunt them. And so understanding their behavior and how they like to hide and how they like to exist in their environment is really important. The other thing that came up in the questions was trail cameras. I'm an old schooler. I use some trail cams to observe wildlife, but I don't want the tracking skill to die. This is me personally. I don't have any problems with people using trail cameras at all, but I personally don't, because I force myself to continue my tracking skill. And so I utilize that to help find game for me. But heck yeah, use your game cameras. Lots of people use them. I use them for just study. I don't use them for hunting though. Anything else to throw in there, guys, on the gear stuff?
as far as like
Tracking
placement
stuff, I mean.
yeah, for placement and stuff as well, terrain can help dictate a lot of that as well. and but it all wraps back in, with the animal behavior is like, where are the deer going to move through this piece of property that you get to hunt on. You can do a lot right off the bat with a good topo map and a understanding of how to read it. Um, you can decide some places that are worth going to and some places that probably aren't even worth your time to go check out. When anytime I'm going to a new place, I'm gonna look at it on a topo map and satellite imagery long before I'll ever put my boots on the ground. Um, just a great example is what we would refer to as a saddle, kind of a low point between two higher points on a ridge. That's where especially your deer and stuff are going to oftentimes have a trail crossing that ridge in that low point. That's a secret cheat code. Put your stand on that saddle and you're probably going to see critters cross it.
Hey, Nahas, question this guy that Daniel threw in here.
Okay.
This one I think would be better covered by you. I'm sure Davey's got a thought on this too, but is 3 acres enough land to start hunting on where my house is, or do I need to look for a larger plot? Let's talk about the legal stuff first, and then we'll talk about.
I mean, legally speaking, and I don't. If you're in Kentucky, yes, that is enough land. They did try to change it to, well, actually, it doesn't matter as far as the size of the acres. It matter about whether you had to have a hunting license or not. But that's been changed on your private property in Kentucky. You do not have to have a hunting license if you're hunting your property. And 3 acres. I mean, it's going to go back to just what they're talking about that habitat and just what kind of 3 acres it is. I mean, I know people that have hunted on half an acre and shot something. Sometimes I'm not 100% sure they're telling me the truth that that's where they shot it. But as far as the 3 acres, I don't know what your 3 acres is. If it's wooded, maybe, I mean, it just depends on, is it enough to hunt on? Yes. Is it enough to start on? Yes. Is it ideal? Obviously, the more land you got, the better chance you have. But and then, of course, it depends on what's around you as far as safety goes, how close other houses are. Legally speaking, you can sit on your back porch in a hot tub and shoot and hunt if you want to. There's nothing.
That sounds like my kind of hunting right there now.
Nothing illegal about it. Now, if it's deer season, rifle, you're going to have to be wearing Hunter Orange in your hot tub.
I could do that.
But you can do that legally. The other part of the question is just hard to answer because I just don't know what your 3 acres is like and what's around it.
Yeah.
Because that would be my big concern is other houses, things like that, where you've got a lot of safety possible issues with 3 acres. I was going to bring up trapping. We haven't talked about trapping, just real quick, how that ties into what you guys are talking about, though. Trapping is a little bit different side of hunting. And if you want to learn wildlife habits and you want to learn what wildlife are doing, trapping is going to do that for you. You have to be really good about where you place your traps and get really specific about that. You can't just throw them down in a field and hope an animal crosses it. You'll starve to death probably before that happens. So that really can help you teach. And talking to a trapper, somebody who has trapped animals that you're interested in, they will know so much about that particular animal, about their habits and where they like to be. Squirrels, we talk about the super highways on the down trees, those kinds of things, and just figuring those nuances out. So whether you want to get into trapping or you just want to talk to trappers have a crazy amount of knowledge about just general wild habitat and what they like to do, their instincts. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And I will throw in, again, being the game warden, trapping doesn't matter if you're on your own private land or not. That's a separate license. You've got to have a trapping license regardless of where you're trapping. So anyway, but I think otherwise you guys have done a good job with that.
No, that's
just
good.
To tie back into it, like learn what the food is that your critter's looking for. And then come back next month and Eric can help you figure out what those plants look like.
There you go.
And then how to find them. Because if you're wanting to hunt in the fall when all the deer are mostly primarily eating acorns and you don't have an oak tree for 3 miles, you're probably not going to see a deer. Things like that. So it all ties back together,
Yep.
for sure.
All right, 2 more questions for gear that were put in the chat, and then we'll move on to the next section, guys. For blaze orange, should it be worn when it is required? Here's how I feel about blaze orange. If it's hunting season, I put blaze orange on my dog when I go out, particularly during rifle season. I will wear blaze orange, and I will put blaze orange on tracker when we go out, just to be uber safe. And I'm typically going on private land, not public land. So there can be a difference between that. Some say that it's not safe to be on public land. I disagree with that 100%. You can go and hunt public land. Davey does it all the time. I grew up doing it all the time. Nayhouse monitors that all the time. It's great places to go. WMAs is what they're typically referred to, or federal land. WMA is a wildlife management area here in the state of Kentucky. Your state probably has them as well. But there are some hunting seasons that require you to wear hunter orange. Here, that's like deer season. It's not required. I haven't looked in a long time, but it's not required to wear it rabbit hunting, is it, Nayhouse?
Unless it overlaps with, like a muzzleloader or a modern gun. Yeah, the only time you're required to wear hunter orange is during a modern gun, modern rifle, deer season, or muzzleloader. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you don't have to wear it. I'm with Craig. I'd wear it as much. I mean, I'd wear it all the time.
I always wore it. My dad always wore it whenever we would rabbit hunt, whenever we would quail grouse hunt, because you're moving in close proximity to other people in the environment. And even though we paid strict attention to gun safety and all that sort of thing, it always helped when our other guys had hunter orange on, because they were easier to find in the woods. And so I'm a big fan of hunter orange. It doesn't detract. It will detract. Davey, you can speak to this better than I can. It will detract from turkey hunting, because they will see it. And that you don't have to wear hunter orange during turkey season, but if you've got orange on in turkey season, they're going to see you. But anything you want to add to that, Davey? Am I okay in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, they can see it for sure.
And Mike Pointer added in, there are many types of camo patterns. Does that really make a difference? These guys might have a different opinion. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. What I do like is 3-dimensional camouflage for turkey hunting and deer hunting, though. So basically something that looks like a ghillie suit works better for me. Nayhouse, Davey, anything you want to add to that? Camo?
I mean, here in Kentucky, it's got to be solid orange, but I think Georgia has a more lax rule on that camo orange or something is good. So, I mean, it's up to you. I don't know if there's a particular advantage in wearing one over the other.
No, this was a separate question they had.
Oh, sorry. Well, I missed that.
About camouflage in general.
Camouflage in general.
Mike Pointer asked the question, there are many types of camo. Is there anything that really makes a difference?
Back on orange. Yeah, I mean, camo in general, and we've talked about this at scout classes. I mean, what camo are you wearing compared to what environment are you in? I mean,
yeah,
I'm wearing, if I'm in the Arctic, I want a pure white suit, but that's not going to do me much good in, Jay's land. So,
right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. So yeah, the different types of camo definitely make a difference. And we've had this conversation too. I mean, sometimes the cheap stuff's as good as the really expensive stuff. So,
yeah.
I mean, being slow and being still, depending on your type of hunting setup, can take you a lot further than whatever you've spent on your camo.
Wisdom right there. That's wisdom speaking right there.
There's been more deer killed than I think we could care to imagine in red flannel shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. No, you make a great point. I mean, just not even, I think we rely sometimes on equipment too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We think we've got the best equipment and the best camo, all this kind of stuff. I've got scent blocker on me. I've got all these things, and Davey's exactly right. I mean, if you know how to hunt, a lot of that stuff might not be as crucial.
Fred Bear, who's he's passed away now, but he killed every large game species, at least in North America, probably across the whole world, because he was overseas quite a bit. He said the best camouflage in the world was to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
This is the dude that knew how to do it well. All right, let's move on, guys and gals. Hunting techniques, strategies for positioning, patience, and accurate shooting. I know Davey's got a thing I'm going to share here in just a minute, and he can talk us through. But there's still hunting, which is basically where you sit still. That can be like from a deer stand where you get elevated in the tree. And a thought on a deer stand is that when you get elevated in a tree, the deer aren't used to seeing a predator above them, so they don't look up as much. So that helps. And we've talked a lot about deer hunting, but still hunting is a great way to squirrel hunt and a great way to turkey hunt. If you know the travel corridors of turkeys, like that turkey I sent to the cadre today, I had on video. Right now, I can tell you right now at 8:15 tomorrow morning, there's going to be a turkey that comes through a certain spot on the farm that I'm on every morning. And I could sit and I could touch that thing with a rifle or a shotgun. I could touch it. And I know where it's going to be because I see it there every morning. I saw it there again today. But knowing your critters and getting out in the field is where that comes into play. Spot and stalk is where you basically walk a few steps and you stop and you look and see what you can see. It's a fantastic way. It's very difficult, but that's how most squirrel hunting is done. A lot of turkey hunting is done that way. Deer hunting, there are very few people actually do that deer hunting anymore, but I highly recommend you get skillful enough to be able to do that. And calling is a fantastic thing, whether you're calling turkeys in or you're calling a big buck in by using a grunt call or something of that nature. Calls are a fantastic thing to get used to using. What do you guys want to throw in on that? I'll get this thing pulled up for you while you are talking, Davey.
As far as like those different methods and whatnot, yeah, one thing I have always heard, and it's extremely difficult to find the patience to do it, but they say, you know, take a step every couple minutes for that stalk hunting. You want to be part of the woods, and if anything realizes you're there because you're moving too much, then you've moved too much. Everything should basically not react to your presence. And once you get to that level, essentially you are going to have like animals move past you even while you're moving through the woods because they don't see you as a threat because you have kind of just blended into the baseline of the woods and are no longer causing any alarms or anything out through the woods. When you make a quick movement or first step into the woods or whatever, it's like throwing a rock into a pond, the ripple effect that goes out through the woods of all the different alarms and things that go off out through the woods. The deer a long ways off, even if they don't smell you, they know something just happened in one direction because all the birds have changed their tune and this, that, and the other. And if you can move through the woods slow enough to not cause that to happen, then you're better off for it.
All right, Dave, you want to talk us through this PDF? Can everybody see it? Yes, give me a thumbs up if you can see it because I can't see everybody.
Yep.
There you go. We're good. All right. David, you just tell me what you need me to do on this thing. I can scroll up or down or whatever.
Yeah, we can start at that top one there.
Okay.
Just real quick, basic anatomy of a deer. We're just going to use them as an example here because it's easy and there's a ton of resources. I've got the I've got the link to where this PDF came from. I'm going to drop a couple links in the chat when we get done tonight, and the location of this will be one of them if people want it. But yeah, just kind of we're going to use deer here real quick just because they're easy. There's a ton of resources out there. But you can find, if you dig around, you can find kind of similar types of charts and stuff for most any critter you're going to go after to find where you should be placing your shot. Um, the vital organs are what you're looking for. And in particular with a deer, your heart and lungs, that's what's going to be your most quick, efficient kill. Um, if you want to scroll down one there, Craig. Um, yeah, this just is throwing just some very generalized target locations for deer based on you got to take into account whether you're elevated up above the deer or down at their level. And then whether the deer is straight 90 degrees to you or if it's coming in at a little bit of an angle or going away from you at an angle, things like that are going to come into play so that you can still place your shot in those vital organs. And then the location of this PDF goes into detail on each of these pictures as well. And then they make a good recommendation on that frontal one that, and I totally agree with it. That's a last resort shot. You know, you've got to be really comfortable and really confident in your shooting capabilities in order to make that shot because there's not much room for error on that one if you want the kill to be ethical. You can go off to the side, not very much one direction or the other from kind of the dead center line there, and not have a particularly ethical kill at all. So really thinking about what that animal, how they're facing you or whatever, and it all happens fast. I think any of us here who have hunted have taken those shots too fast before. So, um, it can happen to anybody, and you can if you end up drifting to one side or the other, you've either made a slow kill or you've just made a not non-lethal hit. So figuring out how to get comfortable with the whatever weapon system you're using to hunt and then practice. Put some time in, whether it's bow or firearm or whatever. Um, Make sure that the weapon system itself is performing properly, and then you are performing properly. Generally, it's not the weapon's fault for a miss.
Yeah, there's a so this is another one of those topics I would love. We could probably do an hour on this one too about ethical considerations of hunting, but I love how Davey put that in that you can see that his focus as a woodsman, as a hunter, is to take the ethical shot. I will go ahead and tell you that there are a lot of hunters that don't care about that, unfortunately. It is our goal at Net. If we're going to be training people to do these sort of things, we want to train them in a high level of ethics. That's our goal. And so taking shots that are as best as you possibly can, one shot, one kill kind of shots, no matter what weapon system you're using, whether it's a bow or crossbow or a rifle or a shotgun, whatever, is going to be our goal. All of us, nearly all of us, have experienced these things. So it's these bad situations. And so it only has to happen one time for you to go, okay, I've got to fix myself. That's why going out to the gun range before season starts, making sure that your rifle or shotgun and everything is on target and shooting well, and it feels good to you, and the rounds are going the way they're supposed to. That is just as important as going to the field and hunting. You have to do that. You've got to be able to do that, or you've got to have a firearm that you know you can count on some way, shape, or form, know that it's going to be accurate. Okay, so let's. Have I missed any questions while we were out?
Someone just put in there about shooting from a tree stand.
Yeah, that's the terminology Davey was using. Elevated, meaning you're up in a tree stand, you're elevated, and you're shooting down on an animal. That's why it had those different. And Davey's going to throw that in there, and you can look at it again. You can see the elevated position because you're basically shooting down into the animal rather than shooting at the same level as the animal, and that plays a role. And you need to practice that. You need to when you're particularly bow hunting. Well, any hunting. If you're going to shoot from a tree stand, you need to be practicing from that tree stand as well whenever you can.
Yeah, it's tough to I get Alan's point there. I mean it's tough to get the opportunity to practice shooting from a tree stand, especially if you don't have your own property to practice marksmanship on. If you're going to a public range or something, they're not going to let you climb a tree stand next to the tube range.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you got to think about the position that you're going to be in that tree stand and do your best to like replicate that from a level position at a range or whatever. If that's sitting or using a rail out in front of you or whatever that may be, try to do your best to replicate that is probably going to be your best bet if you can't actually climb a stand and shoot from it. Um,
And this
it's
goes
easier
back.
to find an opportunity to shoot archery equipment from a tree stand than it would be to find that same opportunity for firearms. But um, yeah, just try to closely replicated as you can, I think is your best bet.
This is one of the questions we didn't necessarily have in our outline to cover, and I was wondering if people would ask, but I'm going to go ahead and cover it anyway. How do you get access to land that's not public? How do you get access to private land? That's a big question a lot of hunters want to know, and there's two ways to do that. One, you can get a lease, and you can actually pay money and have legal rights to utilize land because you're paying a landowner X amount of dollars to hunt on their property. Or two, the way I typically go about it, which is work your butt off for them. Talk to them. Hey, do you need firewood this year? Go over there and cut them a load of firewood. You need help with your fencing? Help them out with their fencing. And the reason I bring that one up in this particular part of the discussion is if you're going over and you're going to farmer A and helping him or her fence and helping them put up cattle or helping them cut firewood or pick up hay in the summer, I doubt very seriously if you go, hey, I want to practice from my tree stand on your land. Do you care if I do that? They're going to let you do it. But they're not going to do it just willy nilly. You don't get stuff for free anymore. You've either got to pay for it or you got to pay for it in sweat equity. So keep that in mind as we're moving along. So last subject before we head out for the night, and we're going to open the floor to questions at the end too and see if we've missed anything in the chat. Make sure that we haven't missed anything. So what happens after you get something? Well, number one, and I'm going to speak from my own experience. These other guys can share from theirs if they want to, or we can move on. It's not fun. It's not fun killing critters. I think it's just as important. I think we're, for thousands and thousands of years, we as a species of animal, humans, have killed animals and ate them. And for us to not do that is the odd thing. That is the anomaly. Going and buying our food at the grocery store is now the anomaly. Hunting is the way it's been done for eons of time. That's the way it's nearly always been done. So I'm just tapping into the way things have normally been done. But to be able to do that is not easy. That doesn't mean that I don't really thoroughly enjoy the act of hunting, the act of getting the animal, taking care of it, making sure that I'm doing what I can from a stewardship perspective and all that kind of good stuff. But here's a big term that comes up is field dressing. I do this with all birds. If it was really hot, I would do this with rabbits, and I always do this with deer, which is what is called field dressing, which is basically you remove the entrails from the animal in the field while you're in the field. And basically what that helps keep down is the possibility of spoilage for people that might get into an early bow hunt like Davey does. Davey goes bow hunting pretty early. You might be hunting out there and it's really warm. You might be hunting in a t-shirt for that matter, and letting the deer lay on the ground out there for 4 or 5 hours. I'm not going to do that type of season. I'm going to get it field dressed. I'm going to get it out of there and do what I can to get it processed. Now, November deer season, and it's 12 degrees. I've been known to kill my legal limit of deer and leave them laying, make sure I get them checked in after I kill them, and then get them hung up when I get out of the field. So make sure that I get them called in for sure. You laughing at me, Nay House?
No, Mackenzie just came home.
Oh, okay. I thought, oh man, I said something where I broke the law. My man's gonna nail me.
No,
Mr. Cottle, I need to write you a ticket.
you're not in my county. You're too far away. I do. I mean, all the way back to Dave's point about crossbow. I've got a crossbow too, and a lot of that is because that season goes all the way into January. And yeah, I don't want to hunt in September and it's 90 degrees and you got to field dress that thing and get it taken care of and, so quickly. So that's a big reason why I picked up crossbow hunting.
Yeah. And then after that, there's all kinds of different things, particularly for big game like an elk or bear or deer. You can take them to game processors and they will process them. Usually that's running about what, $125 now. You guys know? I hadn't had a processor process my deer, and I don't think I ever have. But I think that's going right. You're on mute, Davey. Do you know?
I think it's even more than that.
Is it really?
I want to imagine they're
I'm thinking more like 150
bucks.
You think
is it really $150?
Well, I guess if you're just getting it just processed down into like steaks and stuff, but if you're getting them to grind it and make anything out of it, it's absolutely $200 or $300, I'd say.
Yeah.
Golly, man. Okay. That people is why I process my own deer. And quite frankly, I love keeping that skill alive too, being able to take an animal, process it all the way down to what I want to do. Sometimes we vacuum seal a lot of our meat. Sometimes we just freezer wrap it if we're going to eat it pretty soon. But vacuum sealing it saves a lot of the nutrition in it, and it actually tastes a lot better than freezer wrapping it. But you can do that. Some people can it. I've never canned deer meat. I've never canned any wild game. I know several people have. I've eaten a bunch of it. It's always really good. I need to do that sometime. Davey, do you can some?
We used to. I haven't in a while. I've gotten into I grind a lot of mine and make both just regular straight burger, and then I make a lot of breakfast sausage as well out of my deer. So
I know he brings up to class a lot.
Yeah,
we eat a lot of Davey's deer meat at class, man. I really enjoy it too.
And I'll say while you're talking about all this, I think most states, certainly Kentucky, has a wanton waste law that requires you to make every effort to retrieve that animal from the field. There's actually some pretty strict regulations on that, and that's to try to help with the ethical hunting. People don't just shoot a deer and leave it laying there. They've got to do what they can to harvest the usable parts, the meat of it. So most states are going to have a law like that.
And again, just to emphasize, if you get into hunting, which we highly recommend you do, then you're going to run into people that don't do a lot of this stuff that we're describing, and you need to be better than that. If we want these things to continue, these hunting practices, which I do because it's great for the environment, then we've got to do it as ethically as we possibly can. So I highly recommend using every piece of that animal you can.
Sorry, I was just going to say that goes back to what we talked at the beginning. The reason we have a law like that is unfortunate because people weren't doing that. They were shooting animals and just leaving them there. So now we had to create a law to force them to do that. And it's kind of sad that we have to create that law, but we want to be those good stewards.
And a lot of you might be coming into hunting later in life and you've never done it. It's one of the things that my dad taught me when I was 6 years old in hunting. I'll never forget the first squirrel that I shot and could not find. And we looked for that squirrel. A squirrel, there's millions of them out there, right? I looked for that squirrel for hours until I found it. And my dad made me do that to teach me a lesson that, hey, we don't just shoot stuff and let it drop and don't care about it. We shoot stuff and we find it. We do everything we possibly can. So, and that, my friends, takes us up to an hour, which is pretty remarkable, gentlemen. But here's what I think is we have just put 3 lifetimes of experience into 1 hour. I'm pretty impressed with us, but I'm sure there's some questions.
Yeah, there was 1 or 2.
What did we miss?
Passed in the chat here. I think,
guys, if we missed one of your questions, do this for me to make it easier to find. Type it in there again right now if we missed it, so we can get it answered right now, so we don't have to hunt for it. And if you have another question, throw them at us, please.
I joined you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just let her in.
Recording in progress.
Anybody have any questions that we're missing?
One that I remember seeing was Jason had asked about public lands. How far in are you going and etiquette?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We could do hours worth of seminar just on that, but a lot of it is personal preference as far as how deep. I think there's a big segment of people that think, man, I just got to go super, super far in and whatnot. And, so they're like, oh, you're going to get away from everybody. But there's also 10 other guys that are thinking that same thing. So they've also all hiked 4 miles in. Um, I've, I've been out there further back than I thought anybody would ever go. And then 10 more yards down the trail, and there's a trail camera, you know? So you're not getting away from anybody ever. Um, that
Yeah.
spot you think you found, somebody else knows about it too. So if you are in there and they walk in on you, just try to be as polite and whatnot as you can. You guys both have the same right to be hunting that land as each other. Um, that's, where just being that better ethical person is. If they get ornery about it and that's their spot at the end of the day, typically I just walk away, say, man,
That's
if
good
it means
advice.
that much to you, then you can hunt it here today. That's fine. Um, I've had some times where I got internally very frustrated with other people's actions on public land, but at the end of the day, they are not breaking a law by sitting down in front of you. You know,
Yeah.
um, I I was sitting one day a couple of years ago during the muzzleloader season here in Kentucky, and some guys set up a whole pop-up ground blind just downrange of me. And I mean, there's no
That's not
law
good.
against it. They were like, well, just don't shoot one if it comes out between us. I was just like, but at the end of the day, I just left and went somewhere else,
Yeah.
let them have that spot. But generally, I would say that most of my interactions with others out on public land have been positive. Generally, most people, if you're there first, they're going to turn around and be like, oh, sorry, man, I didn't know you were in here or whatever.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things. There's public land there. Everybody has an equal right to be out there as long as they're abiding by the laws and whatnot. So you unfortunately just have to take that on a case by case basis. And more often than not, most people are super chill. But at the end of the day, if it isn't great, just be the better person and just walk away, let them have that spot. At that point, you've probably ruined that spot anyway with two people in there standing around arguing about who's going to sit where.
Mm-hmm.
So, go find a different spot that hasn't had a bunch of ruckus in it. Hopefully that kind of covers some quick public
That's
land
good.
basics.
Alan asked a question on still hunting versus spot and stalk. How do you balance covering ground stealth when scouting, or you need to cover miles? I think the key is tracking, and no surprise there, right? If you're reading the ground and you're seeing that there's sign in the area, then slow yourself down. If you're not seeing any sign at all in the area, then start covering some miles. I'll just give you a super quick lesson or a story on this. This past gun season, my son called me 2 days before gun season and said, hey, I want to go deer hunting. I haven't been able to hunt with him in like 4 years because of military deployment and all sorts of things. To say I was excited is an understatement that I got to hunt with my son. Okay. So I'd already put my stand up. It was in the primo spot. I mean, primo, the spot that I kill deer in every year. So, good and well, I gave it to him. I said, you go take it. So What I did is I found a drainage on a hillside in Kentucky, which is not a problem. I walked up that drainage in the dark without a headlamp on until I found where deer were crossing that drainage, moved off 10 yards and leaned up against a tree and waited and killed a deer 15 minutes later. Only because I used ground sign. Now, don't get me wrong. I've done this. I've hunted a lot and I track a lot, even in the dark. So, but I know behavior and I know that deer are going to go across the hillside and I know they've got to cross the drainage. And when they cross the drainage, they're going to leave sign. So I just walked right up the middle of that drainage and found it. So yeah, I think it's all about being able to read the sign. Is there any other questions we missed, you all? That was a good one, Alan. I hope that helps.
To tie that back into public land, the biggest buck I've ever killed on public land was 4/10 of a mile from the parking lot.
Nice.
If you find the spot,
Yep.
it may not be that far from your truck.
All right. Any other questions in here, you all? Anything we're missing? This has been an overview for sure. I'm going to put this in your interviews and webinars section of your membership. If there's questions that come up, if you want to watch it again, or if you got questions that come up later, just throw them in below that video and I'll answer them. I'll get to them.
Oh, speaking of the membership and videos and stuff, down the road, hopefully not too far out. Craig has been putting a lot of work into, and I helped him with a little bit of it. We're hopefully going to get a set of videos on deer processing for sure, and I think some other smaller game stuff as well added to the membership, and it's going to be a thorough step-by-step on breaking down your meat and things like that.
I think this brings up a good subject too about hunting. Look at Davey and I, both of us are pretty experienced deer hunters. We process our deer completely backwards from one another. He hangs this from the neck down, or from the neck and hangs it down. I hang mine from the feet and let the head hang down. That's the way I've always done it. That's the way he has always done it. Guess who's right? Both of us are. You need to find what works for you. You'll see these videos and go, okay, I like the way Davey does it. We'll do it the way Davey does it. Or you like the way Craig does it. Do the way Craig does it. It doesn't matter. Just as long as you get it done. And you get it done ethically, you get as much meat as you possibly can off of it. And you'll find that there's a lot of things like that in hunting that are passed down in families that are done a certain way. And I actually love hanging on to some of those things as long as they're ethical. If they're ethical, I do them even though I might know that there's a better way, just because I know my great-grandfather did it that way. I know it might sound crazy to some people, but if it's ethical and I know my great-grandfather did it that way, I'm still doing it that way. All right, got one more message, it looks like. Oh, Mike Pointer says, great job. Thank you all. I think that's it, unless somebody has another question. If we don't care, we'll go ahead and shut her down for the night. I'll shut the recording off.